The world thinks it knows Syria, a name tied to headlines of conflict, of ruin, of loss. But what if that is only the surface? What if beneath the noise there is another Syria, one carved into limestone, one whispered through spice markets, one that has been breathing for 11,000 years? This is a land where empires layered themselves like sediment, where rivers taught humanity how to write, where deserts still remember the sound of caravan bells. This is not the Syria you have heard about on the news. This is Syria unseen, unbroken in spirit, and still burning with memory. There are places so old, so steeped in time, they no longer feel like they belong to any single century. This is where our journey begins. At the foot of Mount Question, where the Barada River once ran generous through orchards of apricot and walnut, lies a city so old that historians hesitate to name its birth: Damascus. Some call it the oldest continuously inhabited city on Earth. 10,000 years of unbroken life, layered beneath its streets like the rings of an ancient tree. Long before Rome rose, before Athens debated philosophy in its marble courts, Damascus was already a city, already trading, already praying, already alive. To walk into Damascus is to walk into a manuscript written in stone. One page laid over another, Aramean foundations beneath Roman columns beneath Umayyad domes, Umayyad domes beneath Ottoman balconies of dark wood and iron latticework. Nothing here was ever truly erased. It was only built upon. The Umayyad Mosque rises at the heart of the old city, its courtyard paved in polished stone that has been worn smooth by more than 1,000 years of bare feet. Golden mosaics, some of the oldest in the Islamic world, still shimmer along its walls, depicting rivers and palaces and paradise gardens, a memory of Damascus as its builders imagined eternity. Before it was a mosque, this ground held a Christian basilica dedicated to John the Baptist. Before that, a Roman temple to Jupiter. Before that, an Aramaean shrine to the storm god Hadad. 4 faiths, 1 courtyard, 1 continuous act of devotion stretching back further than memory can comfortably reach. At dusk, when the call to prayer drifts across the courtyard and mixes with the low murmur of pilgrims, it is easy to believe that every layer beneath your feet is still listening. Long before Damascus was known for its mosques and its markets, it was known for something sharper. For centuries, warriors and traders across 3 continents spoke of a blade unlike any other. A sword that could bend nearly double and spring back straight. A blade so sharp it could, according to legend, slice a silk scarf floating gently through the air. Damascus steel. The name did not necessarily mean the metal was forged within the city walls. Damascus, sitting at the crossroads of the ancient Silk Road, was simply where the finest blades in the known world were bought and sold. European crusaders returning from the Levant carried these swords home and called them Damascenene, honoring the marketplace where East met West, where caravans from India and Persia unloaded ingots of a mysterious dark steel known as woots. The blacksmiths who worked this steel folded and hammered it with a patience that bordered on ritual. Producing blades marked with a rippling, watery pattern along the metal, almost like a river frozen mid-current. That pattern was not decoration, it was structure. layers of hard and soft steel woven together, giving the blade both a razor edge and an almost impossible flexibility. The exact technique passed master to apprentice in hushed workshops eventually faded from history sometime in the 18th century. The secret, some say, died with the last craftsman who understood it. But the name endured. Damascus steel became shorthand for perfection itself, a phrase still used today by knife makers chasing the ghost of a metal that once made an entire city legendary. Even now, in small workshops tucked into the old quarters, blacksmiths continue hammering pattern-welded steel by hand, keeping alive not the exact secret, but the spirit of a craft that once made the world look toward Damascus in awe. Step beyond the mosque, and Damascus folds in on itself. The old city is not laid out. It grows the way roots grow beneath old trees, twisting wherever centuries of foot traffic decided a path should be. Streets barely 8 feet wide, about 2.5 meters, snake between buildings that lean toward each other overhead, close enough that neighbors on opposite sides can almost pass a cup of coffee hand to hand from their balconies. Sunlight falls in narrow, golden blades between the buildings, illuminating dust hanging in the air like suspended memory. There is a street here called Bab Sharki, the street called straight, mentioned by name in the biblical book of Acts, one of the few roads from antiquity whose exact path can still be walked today, nearly 2,000 years after it was first written down. Following it feels less like a walk and more like tracing a line drawn by history itself. Wooden doors, weathered and iron-studded, open unexpectedly into hidden courtyards. Behind unassuming facades, entire homes unfold around a central fountain, citrus trees growing toward open sky, carved stone benches worn soft by generations of quiet conversation. This architectural style, the courtyard house, was Damascus answering its own climate. Thick outer walls kept the desert heat at bay, while the open courtyard inside created its own private, cooler world. A small paradise hidden from the chaos of the street. Merchants call out from doorways. Copper pots hang in gleaming rows outside workshops that have sold the same wares for generations. The scent of cardamom coffee drifts from tiny stalls no larger than a closet, poured into thimble-sized cups for men who have been meeting at the same corner every morning for decades. To walk these alleys without a map is not to be lost, it is to be found, pulled deeper into a city that has never needed straight lines to know exactly who it is. Follow the alleys long enough and they begin to reveal their own quiet rhythm. A baker sliding flatbread from a stone oven at dawn, an old man threading prayer beads while seated on a low wooden stool outside his shop, watching the street the way he has watched it every morning for 40 years. Children weave between push carts loaded with pomegranates and figs, their laughter bouncing off close stone walls in a way that makes the entire alley feel, briefly, like a single shared room, rather than a public street. Higher up, wooden window screens known as mashrabiyah jut out from upper floors, intricately carved lattice that once allowed women inside to observe the street below without being seen themselves, a small architectural act of privacy folded into public space. Damascus does not reveal itself all at once. It reveals itself in fragments, a courtyard glimpsed through a half-open door, a fragment of Roman inscription built sideways into a much later wall, a call to prayer overlapping briefly with church bells from a nearby Christian quarter, two calls to devotion sharing the same narrow strip of sky. That overlap, that layering of faiths and eras within a single block, may be the most honest portrait of the city there is. Damascus was never one thing. It has always been many things folded carefully into the same small, ancient footprint. Beyond the walls of Damascus, across open plains where the wind carries the scent of dry grass and dust, another kind of history gallops. Syria, alongside the wider Arabian Peninsula, is one of the ancestral homelands of the Arabian horse, a breed so old that its bloodlines are traced not just through pedigree, but through legend. Bedouin tribes bred these horses for endurance across brutal desert distances, favoring animals that could travel far on little water and survive nights where temperatures could swing from scorching to freezing within hours. An adult Arabian horse typically stands around 5 feet at the shoulder, about 15 hands, or roughly 1.5 meters, smaller and lighter than many European breeds, but built with a chest and lung capacity that seem almost disproportionate to its frame. That distinctive dished profile, the high-carried tail, the large expressive eyes, these were not simply bred for beauty. Bedouin herders believed the horse's wide nostrils and deep chest cavity allowed for greater airflow across long desert rides, an adaptation shaped by centuries of necessity. Legend holds that the finest Arabian bloodlines descend from 5 foundation mares, known as al-Khamsa, said to have been chosen by the Prophet Muhammad himself after testing their loyalty following days without water. True history or treasured myth, the reverence remains the same. Among Bedouin families, a prized mare was not property. She was family, sometimes sleeping inside the family tent itself, close enough that children grew up learning her breathing before they learned their own names for the stars above. Even now, breeders across Syria continue this legacy, carefully guarding bloodlines that stretch back not merely generations, but centuries. Animals whose ancestry can, in some documented lines, be traced with more precision than many royal families. To watch an Arabian horse move at full stride across open desert is to watch inherited memory in motion, a body shaped entirely by a landscape that demanded speed, stamina, and an almost spiritual bond between horse and rider. If Damascus is where memory layered itself in stone, the Euphrates is where memory first learned to speak. Rising from the mountains of eastern Turkey and cutting nearly 1,800 miles, close to 2,900 kilometers through Syria and Iraq before emptying toward the Persian Gulf, the Euphrates is one of 2 rivers that cradled the very birth of civilization. Along its banks, in the region historians call Mesopotamia, humanity first organized itself into cities, first developed irrigation, first pressed reeds into wet clay and called the marks writing. In Syria, the river carves a green ribbon through otherwise unforgiving desert, and it was along this ribbon that some of humanity's earliest urban experiments took root. the city of Mary, now a mound of earth called Tel Hariri, once stood as a thriving Bronze Age capital along the Euphrates nearly 5,000 years ago. Excavations there uncovered a royal palace with hundreds of rooms and thousands of clay tablets, an entire bureaucratic archive preserved by fire and buried by time. Standing on the riverbank at dawn, watching the water move slow and silver beneath a sky just beginning to warm, it becomes difficult not to feel the weight of what happened here. This water irrigated the first wheat fields. This water floated the first reed boats. This water, quite literally, watched civilization take its first steps. Following the Euphrates and its tributaries into the highlands of western Syria, the landscape rises into jagged limestone ridges, and upon those ridges, stone fortresses still cling to the sky. These are the castles of the Nizari Ismailis, a medieval sect whose followers became known across Europe by a name that still echoes through modern language: the Assassins. Perched atop near vertical cliffs, sometimes towering nearly 3,000 feet, around 900 meters above the valley floor, fortresses like Masyaf were built not merely for defense, but for near-total isolation. To reach these strongholds required scaling narrow paths cut directly into rock, paths easily defended by a handful of guards against armies numbering in the thousands. It was from castles like this that the sect's leader, known in Crusader accounts as the Old Man of the Mountain, was said to command a network of highly trained loyalists willing to carry out precise, targeted killings against political enemies, a practice that gave the medieval world an entirely new vocabulary for political violence. Undoubtedly, their myth exaggerated their methods or history simply failed to record them accurately, one truth remains undisputed. These fortresses were engineering marvels of their era, built from massive, interlocking stone blocks hauled up sheer cliff faces by hand, cisterns carved deep into rock to store enough water to withstand sieges lasting months. Walking through the roofless halls of Masyaf today, wind moving freely through what were once fortified corridors, it is easy to imagine sentries once standing at these same broken windows, scanning the valley below for approaching riders, protecting a secretive order that shaped medieval history far beyond the size of its territory. The stones remain silent about what truly happened within these walls, but they remain standing, which is its own kind of testimony. The Euphrates carried civilization outward, and centuries later, Rome carried its own vision of civilization back into Syria, stamping the desert with columns, aqueducts, and above all, theaters. Nowhere is that legacy more haunting than at Palmyra. Rising from the desert roughly 130 miles, about 210 kilometers northeast of Damascus, Palmyra was once among the most important trading cities in the ancient world, a wealthy oasis metropolis linking Rome to Persia, to India, and beyond. At its height in the first centuries after Christ, Palmyra's colonnaded streets stretched for over half a mile, roughly a kilometer, lined with towering columns nearly 30 feet tall, around 9 meters, a boulevard designed to overwhelm every merchant and traveler who entered from the desert. At the heart of this ancient city stood a Roman theater, its stage backdrop still bearing the carved outlines of columns and niches where statues of emperors and gods once stood. The theater could seat well over 1,000 spectators on tiered stone benches, gathered beneath the desert sun to watch performances that once entertained a city so wealthy its merchants funded monuments rivaling those of Rome itself. Palmyra's ruler, Queen Zenobia, briefly challenged Roman authority itself in the 3rd century, declaring an independent empire stretching from Egypt to Anatolia before Rome crushed the rebellion and reclaimed the city. Her ambition still seems to echo through the ruins, in the height of the columns, in the confidence of the architecture, in a city built by people who genuinely believed they could rival an empire. War in recent years brought devastating destruction to parts of Palmyra, entire monuments reduced to rubble in acts that shocked archaeologists and historians worldwide. And yet the theater, though scarred, still stands, its stone tiers still curved toward a stage that once held actors, orators, and perhaps even Zenobia's own court. To sit in that theater now, surrounded by silence where applause once rose beneath desert stars, is to feel the strange, aching persistence of beauty even in a landscape marked by loss. West of Palmyra and stretching across much of southeastern Syria lies a vast expanse of stone and sand known as the Badia, the Syrian steppe desert. For thousands of years, this was not empty space on a map. It was a living highway. Ancient caravan routes crossed the Badia, connecting Mesopotamia to the Mediterranean, carrying silk from China, spices from India, frankincense from Arabia, all funneled through way stations scattered across the seemingly endless expanse. Traveling these routes was not a simple journey. Caravans could stretch for over a mile, more than 1.5 kilometers, sometimes numbering hundreds of camels laden with goods, moving at a deliberate pace of perhaps 20 to 25 miles a day, roughly 30 to 40 kilometers, timed carefully around the location of the next well. A single camel could carry loads of around 400 to 600 pounds, roughly 200 kilograms, while surviving for over a week without water in punishing heat. An adaptation that made these caravans possible across a landscape that offered travelers almost nothing in the way of mercy. Merchants moving through the Badia relied on Bedouin guides whose knowledge of hidden wells and safe passage had been passed down across generations. An oral map more precise than anything drawn on parchment. At night, caravans would make camp beneath open sky, campfires scattered like small constellations across the dark desert floor, the low murmur of prayer and conversation carrying easily across the still, dry air. Even today, small groups of Bedouin herders still move seasonally through parts of the Badia, driving flocks of sheep and goats between grazing grounds, their tents pitched exactly where their ancestors once pitched theirs, following rhythms shaped not by calendars, but by rainfall and memory. The desert does not forget easily. Every worn path, every ancient well, every scattered ruin along these routes is a quiet record of a trade network that helped connect 3 continents centuries before anyone used the word globalization. Scattered throughout the Badia are the remains of ancient way stations known as khans, fortified caravanserais where merchants could rest, water their animals, and trade goods under the protection of thick stone walls. Some of these khans could shelter several hundred travelers and their animals at once. Their central courtyards, open to the sky, ringed by stone chambers where merchants slept alongside their most valuable cargo, close enough to reach out and touch it through the night. Qasr al-Hayr al-Sharqi, an Umayyad desert complex rising unexpectedly from the flat expanse of the steppe, still shows the remains of towers, gates, and an elaborate water collection system that once sustained an agricultural oasis in the middle of nowhere. Proof that even the harshest stretches of the Badia were once coaxed, however briefly, into fertility. At dawn, when the low sun catches the pale stone of these ruined way stations and stretches long shadows across the gravel plain, it becomes easy to imagine the scene as it once was. Camels groaning as their loads were unstrapped, merchants counting bolts of silk by torchlight, the low, constant hum of a dozen languages mixing beneath a single desert sky. That hum has long since faded, but the stones remain, half buried in sand, still marking the exact route where east once reliably met west. If the Badia was where the ancient world's goods traveled, Damascus was where they finally arrived. At the heart of the old city lies Souk al-Hamidiyya, one of the largest and oldest covered markets in the Middle East, a corridor of commerce stretching for roughly 2,000 feet, around 600 meters, beneath a vaulted iron roof built during the Ottoman era in the late 19th century. Sunlight pierces the metal roof through countless small bullet-shaped holes, some worn naturally through age, others said to date from gunfire during periods of unrest, scattering the market below in delicate, moving constellations of light. Beneath that shifting canopy of sun, the souk hums with a rhythm that feels almost unchanged across centuries. Silk scarves in impossible colors hang from wooden beams. Copper trays, hand-hammered with intricate geometric patterns, catch the light in bursts of gold. The scent of fresh pistachios roasting nearby mixes with rose water, cardamom, and the sharp perfume of dried spices piled in small, fragrant mountains. Shopkeepers, some the fourth or fifth generation to run the same stall, call out prices with the same theatrical charm their great-grandfathers likely used, a negotiation that is as much performance as it is transaction. At the far end of the souk, the towering columns of the Temple of Jupiter rise unexpectedly, a fragment of Roman Damascus standing directly at the market's entrance, ancient stone framing a doorway into the Umayyad mosque beyond. It is a striking collision of eras: Roman columns, Ottoman ironwork, modern commerce, all existing within the same 100 feet, about 30 meters, all part of the same unbroken conversation Damascus has been having with time since before recorded history began. To walk through Souk al-Hamidiyya at dusk, when shafts of golden light fall through those small perforations overhead, and the crowd thickens with the scent of grilling meat and fresh bread, is to understand exactly why Damascus earned its old nickname among travelers, the city where the world once came to trade, and in many quiet corners of this market still does. North and west of Damascus, scattered across the limestone hills between Aleppo and Idlib, lies one of Syria's most haunting landscapes. Historians and archaeologists call them the Dead Cities. More than 700 abandoned settlements spread across an area of roughly 400 square miles, over 1,000 square kilometers, left remarkably intact by the dry climate and isolation of the region. Between the 1st and 7th centuries, these were not ruins. They were thriving Byzantine towns, built on the wealth of olive oil production, their economies fueling trade networks that stretched across the eastern Mediterranean. Clean multi-story stone houses still stand here, some rising 2 or even 3 stories, around 20 to 30 feet, roughly 6 to 9 meters. Their carved lintels, arched doorways, and columned porticos remarkably preserved, as though residents simply stepped out one afternoon and never returned. Ancient churches, their apses and baptismal fonts still visible beneath open sky, stand roofless among fields of wildflowers that bloom briefly each spring, nature quietly reclaiming what commerce and faith once built. Historians still debate exactly why these prosperous towns were abandoned. Shifting trade routes, changes in agricultural demand, the gradual decline of Byzantine influence in the region, and later the rise of new trade patterns following the Islamic conquests all likely played a role. There was no single catastrophe here, no dramatic destruction, just a slow, quiet exodus, families gradually moving on until eventually silence became the only permanent resident. Walking among these stone skeletons today, wildflowers pushing up through what were once paved courtyards, it is remarkably easy to reconstruct daily life in your mind. Here, a doorway worn smooth by hands reaching for a threshold. There, a stone basin once used for pressing olives, its curved channel still perfectly intact after some 15 centuries. The dead cities do not feel tragic in the way ruins of war often do. They feel patient, as if the stones themselves are simply waiting, quietly confident that someone, eventually, would come back to listen. Among the most striking of these settlements is Sergilla, remarkably complete for a town abandoned some 14 centuries ago. Its bathhouse still stands, complete with a domed roof and a system of channels that once carried heated water through the building, an engineering feat that speaks to a level of daily comfort rarely associated with rural life in this period. Nearby, at Al-Bara, dozens of pyramidal stone tombs rise from olive groves, funerary monuments built for the wealthy families whose olive oil once fueled trade across the entire eastern Mediterranean. Their pointed roofs, some rising nearly 20 feet, around 6 meters, have survived storms, earthquakes, and centuries of neglect, largely intact. What makes the dead cities so quietly extraordinary is not any single ruin, but their sheer number. More than 700 settlements, most still barely studied, scattered across these limestone hills like an entire civilization's rough draft, abandoned mid-sentence and never revised. Farmers still work fields between some of these ruins today. Their olive trees, in certain groves, descended from rootstock planted well over 1,000 years ago, still producing fruit each autumn as though the intervening centuries were a minor interruption rather than an ending. Far to the south, near the border with Jordan, the Syrian landscape suddenly changes character entirely. Here rises Jebel al-Druza, sometimes called Jabal al-Arab, a volcanic highland region reaching elevations of over 5,500 feet, roughly 1,700 meters. Its black basalt slopes a stark contrast to the pale limestone deserts surrounding it. This entire region was shaped by volcanic activity dating back tens of thousands of years. Ancient eruptions leaving behind fields of dark, porous basalt rock scattered across the landscape like frozen waves of stone. Local builders learned centuries ago to work with what the mountain offered them. Homes throughout the region are constructed almost entirely from this dense black basalt, giving villages across Jebel al-Druza a distinctive, almost otherworldly appearance. Dark stone walls standing in sharp contrast against the surrounding green farmland during spring rains. The region takes its name from the Druze community, a religious minority whose faith emerged in the 11th century, blending elements of Islamic philosophy, Greek philosophy, and Gnostic thought into a distinct and closely guarded spiritual tradition. For centuries, the rugged, defensible terrain of these volcanic highlands offered the Druze community a degree of protection and autonomy. Their villages built into the folds of the mountains, connected by winding roads that climb steadily through fields bordered by loose stacked basalt walls. Ancient volcanic craters, long dormant, dot the higher elevations of the region, their bowl-shaped depressions now filled with wildflowers each spring, a strange and beautiful softness rising from what was once violent geological upheaval. At higher elevations, the volcanic soil here proves remarkably fertile, supporting vineyards and orchards that have earned the region a reputation for some of the finest fruit in the country. Apples and grapes thriving in soil enriched by millennia-old lava flows. Jebel al-Druza stands as a reminder that even landscapes shaped by fire and upheaval can, given enough time, become places of remarkable fertility and quiet resilience, much like the community that has called these dark mountains home for nearly 1,000 years. Scattered across Syria, far beyond Palmyra and the Dead Cities, lie hundreds of additional ancient sites, each one a fragment of a civilization that once believed itself permanent. At Ebla, southwest of Aleppo, archaeologists uncovered one of the earliest known royal archives in human history, more than 17,000 clay tablets dating back nearly 4,500 years, written in a language that predates even Akkadian in the historical record. At Apamea, along the Orontes River, a colonnaded Roman avenue stretches for nearly 1.25 miles, roughly 2 kilometers, lined with columns so perfectly aligned that standing at one end and looking toward the other creates the disorienting sensation of staring directly down a corridor of time. At Basra in the south, an extraordinarily well-preserved Roman theater built from black basalt stone, the same volcanic rock found throughout Jebel al-Druze, could once seat some 15,000 spectators, its acoustics so precise that a whisper from center stage can reportedly still be heard clearly from the topmost row. Each of these sites tells a slightly different chapter of the same larger story. Syria as crossroads, Syria as prize, Syria as a land so strategically vital, so agriculturally rich, so culturally significant, that virtually every major empire in the ancient Near East eventually laid claim to some portion of it. Akkadians, Assyrians, Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, Romans, Byzantines, Umayyads, Abbasids, Crusaders, Mamluks, Ottomans, each left behind stone, each left behind language, each left behind fragments still being uncovered by archaeologists today. Standing among these ruins, it becomes impossible to view Syria through the lens of any single era. This is a land built from layers, and every layer still has something left to say. At Bozrah, beyond the Great Theater, an entire Roman city still lies partially buried beneath the modern town built atop it. Colonnaded streets, a triumphal arch, and public baths emerging gradually as archaeological work continues, block by careful block. The black basalt used throughout Bozrah gives the entire site a distinctive, almost brooding beauty. Dark stone catching the light differently than the pale limestone found elsewhere in Syria, a visual signature tying the city directly to the volcanic geology of the nearby Druze highlands. At Apamea, alongside the Great Colonnade, archaeologists have uncovered elaborate floor mosaics depicting hunting scenes and mythological figures, their colors remarkably still vivid after some 15 centuries beneath protective layers of soil. Taken together, sites like Ebla, Apamea, and Bozrah form a kind of second map of Syria, one written not in modern borders but in the footprints of empires, each ruin a page in a story that began long before any nation currently occupying this land had a name. No honest telling of Syria's story can look away from what the last decade and a half brought to this land. Beginning in 2011, civil war spread across the country, eventually touching nearly every region, every city, and in some tragic cases, every ancient site described in this very documentary. Parts of Aleppo's ancient souk, itself a UNESCO World Heritage Site with roots stretching back over 1,000 years, were severely damaged by fighting. Entire covered market corridors reduced to blackened rubble. At Palmyra, the theater we described earlier survived, but the nearby Temple of Bel, one of the best preserved ancient temples in the entire Middle East, was deliberately destroyed, an act that drew condemnation from historians and cultural preservationists around the world. Millions of Syrians were displaced from their homes, some fleeing across borders into neighboring countries, others resettling within Syria itself. Entire communities scattered, entire neighborhoods emptied in ways that echoed, tragically, the slow abandonment of the ancient dead cities centuries earlier, only now compressed into years rather than centuries. The scars remain visible across much of the country. Buildings still stand half-collapsed in parts of Homs and Aleppo, their exposed rooms open to the sky like broken honeycomb, a haunting silhouette against the skyline. And yet, even amid this devastation, something persistent continues. Restoration efforts, however slow and difficult, have begun in places like Aleppo's Old City. Local craftsmen, some from families who have worked in restoration for generations, carefully piece together fragments of collapsed stonework, painstakingly matching each carved block back to its original position. It is a reminder that Syria's story has always included chapters of destruction followed, eventually, by rebuilding. The dead cities were abandoned, Damascus was conquered and reconquered across millennia, and still, this land continues, layer upon layer, scar upon scar, rebuilding itself the way it always has. not by forgetting what was lost, but by carrying it forward into whatever comes next. Beyond the cities, beyond the ruins, beyond even the deep desert of the Badia, much of eastern and southeastern Syria unfolds into open steppe, a semi-arid grassland landscape that stretches toward the horizon in every direction. The Syrian steppe covers a significant portion of the country's interior, a transitional landscape between the fertile river valleys and the true desert further south, characterized by low, scrubby vegetation, scattered wildflowers after seasonal rains, and vast open skies broken only occasionally by distant, low hills. In spring, following winter rainfall, this landscape briefly transforms. Wild grasses and flowering plants push up through soil that seemed lifeless only weeks earlier, creating a temporary green carpet across ground that will, within a few short months, return to dust and gold beneath the punishing summer sun. For countless generations, this steppe has supported Bedouin pastoralists whose herds of sheep and goats graze across these open plains, following patterns of rainfall and vegetation growth passed down through oral tradition rather than written maps. Traditional black woven tents, made from goat hair and designed to expand or contract with a family's needs, still appear scattered across parts of the steppe during grazing seasons, dark rectangular silhouettes against an otherwise unbroken landscape of pale green and tan. The steppe is deceptively harsh. Daytime temperatures during summer months can climb well above 100 degrees Fahrenheit, nearly 40 degrees Celsius, while nighttime temperatures, particularly in winter, can drop dramatically, sometimes below freezing, a swing that demands resilience from everything and everyone who calls this landscape home. And yet there is a particular, quiet beauty to the steppe that deserts and mountains cannot quite replicate. Its openness, its sense of endless horizon, the way a single distant tree or scattered ruin becomes visible from miles away, drawing the eye across a landscape with almost nothing to interrupt it. It is, in many ways, the truest expression of Syria's geography, a land existing in the transitional space between fertile abundance and unforgiving desert, having learned across thousands of years exactly how to survive within that delicate balance. Herders here still practice transhumance, moving flocks seasonally between winter pastures near the river valleys and summer grazing grounds higher on the steppe, a migration pattern that repeats itself with almost no variation from one generation to the next. A single flock might number several hundred sheep, trailed by a handful of herders on foot or horseback, accompanied always by large, shaggy livestock guardian dogs bred specifically to fend off wolves that still roam the more remote stretches of the steppe. Along the way, small stone cairns mark old grazing boundaries and water sources, informal landmarks understood perfectly by those who grew up navigating this landscape, yet nearly invisible to any outsider passing through. In late afternoon, when the low sun turns the pale grasses a deep amber and long shadows stretch from every small rise and the steppe takes on an almost meditative stillness, broken only by the distant bleating of a flock or the soft rhythmic thud of hooves against packed earth. It is a landscape built for patience, rewarding those who move slowly, who watch the sky for signs of rain, who understand that survival here has never been about conquering the land, but about moving in rhythm with it. And then, at last, night falls across the steppe. Away from the cities, away from any trace of artificial light, the darkness here is complete in a way most modern travelers rarely experience. And it is in that darkness that Syria offers perhaps its most humbling landscape of all, one requiring no ruins, no ancient stone, no monument built by human hands. The sky. Far from urban light pollution, the desert and steppe regions of Syria offer some of the clearest views of the night sky remaining anywhere in the Middle East. On clear, moonless nights, the Milky Way stretches directly overhead, a dense, luminous band of stars arching from one horizon to the other, visible with a clarity that feels almost impossible to those accustomed to city skies. Thousands of stars become visible to the naked eye, far more than most people will ever see in a lifetime spent beneath artificially lit skies, scattered across the darkness in a density that makes familiar constellations briefly difficult to pick out among the sheer abundance surrounding them. For the ancient civilizations that once called this land home, this same sky was not simply scenery. It was a tool and a temple. The priests of Palmyra tracked celestial movements to guide agricultural and religious calendars. Bedouin navigators used star positions to guide caravans safely across the featureless expanse of the Badia, reading Polaris and the seasonal rotation of constellations the way modern travelers might read a road sign. The night falls, and standing beneath this same sky today, wrapped against the surprising chill of a desert night, it becomes remarkably easy to understand why. Beneath a sky this vast, this detailed, this endlessly layered with light traveling toward you from stars that may have died millennia ago, human concerns of borders and centuries begin to feel remarkably small. This is the same sky that watched the first cities rise along the Euphrates, the same sky that watched caravans cross the Badia loaded with silk and frankincense, the same sky that watched Zenobia's empire rise and fall, that watched the dead cities slowly empty, that has watched, more recently, a nation endure war and begin, slowly, the long work of rebuilding. It has watched everything, and it says nothing, offering instead only its quiet, ancient light, indifferent to the passage of empires, patient in a way only stars can afford to be. From the layered stones of Damascus to the volcanic slopes of Jebel al-Druzeh, from the whispered courtyards of the Old City to the wind-scoured silence of the dead cities, Syria reveals itself not as a single story, but as a chorus of them, overlapping, sometimes contradicting, always continuing. This is a land that taught the world how to write, how to trade, how to build cities that would inspire empires for thousands of years afterward. A land that has known extraordinary wealth and extraordinary devastation, often within the very same city walls. And yet, beneath every layer of stone, beneath every scarred building slowly being rebuilt, beneath every star still burning quietly overhead, something in Syria continues. Not loudly, not without cost, but it continues. If every land is a whisper carried across time, Syria is a chorus, low, layered, and unwilling to fall completely silent. If you feel that Syria is both distant and strangely familiar, like a memory belonging to all of humanity rather than to any single people, leave a comment below. And if journeys like this one interest you, like the video so you can continue traveling with us to the places the world too often forgets to look.